Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
Oh, this week we are going to end out our Nick Cage festival with the unbearable weight of massive talent from 2022.
Nick fucking Cage!
Let's dive in.
All right, everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
And if you like what you see /hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us all the spaces and places people find good media.
Yes.
We have festivals. We have that one scene
analysis.
Yeah. We have 101s. We've got
Forgotten Gems.
We've got
all
kinds of
sorts of
Yep.
stuff. Please like and subscribe.
Yes.
Hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, we have this video element to the podcast that we would love you to enjoy as well. So
Yes.
Join us. But let's end out this festival. We do have, I guess we will say, we do have a Forgotten Gem of the Weatherman.
Yes,
in
that
a
we'll
couple
be doing
of
in a
weeks.
couple of weeks. Yeah.
But this is officially kind of the end of the Nick Cage festival. So I figured I'd watched this movie earlier this year and was like, all right, well, we can't do Nick Cage Festival without doing this movie because it's really an homage to him.
It's too much. I mean, honestly, it locks into everything.
Honestly, the first, obviously, the first scene of the movie is the last scene of Con Air.
That's right.
They're watching
with a couple of stoner kids watching.
And there's a couple of stoner kids, and the first two lines of this, first few lines of the script are, Nick Cage is incredible. They pass the joint, and then they say, he's a fucking legend.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, yes, we have to do this as part of the festival, right? At the very least. Like, It's so perfect. It is an homage to him. It's something that he was, didn't necessarily want to do at first, but kind of understand it. We obviously get... I think this festival and this movie especially made me realize how much he loves meta shit. Because, you think about Face Off, the duality there, adaptation of course. This one as well. Mm-hmm. Like, that almost is what our festival is about, right?
Yes,
to a degree.
So.
Obviously, we have Raising Arizona and a few, Weatherman in there as well.
Well, I started thinking about this and I was like, well, first of all, before I get to this thought, to get out in front of it, obviously... Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent is a play off of the Dave Eggers book.
Oh, it is a play off of that?
Well, I'm I don't know how it couldn't be. I mean,
a heartbreaking work of staggering genius.
Heartbreaking work of staggering genius. I was thinking about that, and I was like, both. Like Dave Eggers' book, using that title is also tongue in cheek, right? It's a douchey way of saying. When somebody reads this, they're going to think that I did something people haven't done before. So I'm going to get out in front of it and be like, yeah, I know, right? Like I can't actually say, I think I'm great. So I'm going to say this thing instead and be like, I'm in on the joke. I too am an idiot, right?
Yes.
And I feel like that's why he chose, why this was chosen is because it does lean into that idea of, the Nick Cage in this movie does consistently think that everything he's ever done, he's a genius at. And so we have to accept there's... Well, that's just it. We have to accept that there is a level to him where he's like, I know.
I think at the very least, this shows how beloved of an actor he is,
completely,
right? Like,
completely.
This whole movie, but also that a lot of people actually care about him enough to like make this movie and spend millions of dollars to do it. And it's such a fun, reflective look back on his career. Like, the day that he passes away, this will be the movie to go back and watch because it encapsulates so much of his career, his passion for film, and dorky passion. I mean, he is a Coppola, so I mean, I guess that's in their blood. But for the most part, his views on Dr. Caligari, I'm just like, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. He knows his shit.
But at the same time, we also have the character of Nicky, which is basically the version of him from Wild at Heart.
Yes,
that's this younger version of him
that just wants to be a fucking star.
Well, I love this duality between the two because he's like,
it is great.
He's like, this is the one that's going to put me back on the map as like a real actor. And Nicky's like, fuck being a real actor.
Oh, you want to be the gay uncle in the new Duplass Brothers movie?
Yeah, you want to be in a fucking student film? Like he calls the Duplass Brothers a student film. I totally love the gay uncle in a Duplass Brothers film. Like there's so many in-industry jokes here, but absolutely. I would say that conversation, and then the third tier to it, which is that at the same time he's also going, yeah, I know I work all the time, but that's because like I gotta pay my mortgages and shit. Mm-hmm. Like he's totally like, it's also a job. Like I want to be working.
He has to feel like he's venting a little bit at the beginning of this, where we see his like day to day in Hollywood, and he starts reading in front of David Gordon Green.
That's such a great scene.
He's like, fuck it, I'm gonna read anyway.
Green as a director does an amazing bit of acting here, where he like kind of turtles his head back, and then all you can say is spellbinding. That was absolutely amazing, right? And you're like, well, what else are you going to say?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, you're like, it's so uncomfortable. It's a horrible Boston accent he does. Like every part of it's incredible.
Few little things that I have. So this is appropriately Nick Cage's 100th movie.
Yes,
I love that. He liked the character of Javi more when he read the script, and thought so much, even so that he thought he would want to trade parts, and that he was his own biggest fan, and he thought that him being his own biggest fan was more meta than him playing himself.
Right, so he wanted to have someone else play him.
Yes.
And I was like, I kind of wish they would have made that movie. As much as I really do love this movie.
I'm so glad I knew you
would. It's a very sweet movie. I mean, it's
a love letter to him.
It's a love letter to him, and I will say this right now. There's nothing about it that's challenging or earth-shattering or changed anything. It's just a fun damn movie. It's got a great, very, very sweet sense of humor. It's not dangerous. You're not worried about like
world espionage.
Yeah, none of it matters.
I mean, they're a gun cartel, right?
Here's the thing. At the end of the day, everybody, this movie doesn't matter.
No.
If you love Nick Cage, it will deeply matter to you. But
yes.
in the pantheon of cinema, it doesn't matter at all.
I totally get it.
But I will say that if they had done this exact same movie, but Pedro Pascal had played Nick Cage, and Nick Cage had played Javi, this movie would mean something.
Wow.
It would go down in history as one of the weirdest fucking things Hollywood had ever done. Right? Yeah. I don't even know how they would have pulled it off.
Yeah, I don't either.
But that's how you could have made something that meant something. And that's fine that this doesn't. But I'm just saying, when I read that same thing, I was like, it kind of broke my brain a little bit, where I was like, I don't even know what that would have been. That would have been amazing. Like, anyway, all that being said.
One of my favorite parts of this movie is that this has actually gotten him back out on the media circuit doing interviews, which he hadn't for like 15 years.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I don't even know if I knew that.
I've watched a bunch of, him going on late night talk shows and stuff like that, and he is just a one of a kind.
Yeah.
He truly is. But he had this quote about how he never wants to watch this movie. Mm-hmm. Can I tell you this?
Yes. Okay.
He said,
hold on. Let me. Okay, go.
He said they'll probably never watch the movie because the idea of going meta and playing quote unquote surrealistic version of myself and a quote unquote surrealistic version or interpretation of a younger version of myself going head to head might just be too psychologically evasive for one Nicolas Cage. So he talked about himself in the third person.
Of course he did.
He said, I will go to the premiere, but I'm probably not going to be sitting in the audience. However, due to a conflict between the director and the studio, Cage had to watch the movie to decide about some scenes.
So what happened when he did? Did he go back in time? Was it one Nick Cage too many?
I hope so. I totally understand what he's saying there, right? Like,
Grandma, get Grandma. Grandma's on the loose. It's like
it's
too many Nick Cages. The universe is going to collapse in on itself. I will say this.
I love his mindset about it because it's probably got to not be easy. I think in a similar way to Kevin Bacon not understanding the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, like that it was an homage and love letter to you being such an awesome actor and being in so many good things.
Fuck you guys, I gotta work.
I can see why an actor would put up those walls, right? Well, and the fact that he was able to embrace it, it's something like that, like it shows what he will do for art.
Well, let's talk about some other examples of this same thing. I think probably the most famous one is being John Malkovich, right?
I've got a good one for you.
And then the other one I was thinking was JCVD.
Damn it, that was
Is
mine.
That the other one?
Yep,
Yeah,
JCVD. Actually, the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. I agree. It's basically a similar type of situation, right? Like, oh, you're this person in real life. Everyone knows you. You're famous.
Yeah.
Come do this thing. In the case of JCVD was robbing a bank or getting stuck.
So they're all like, well, why don't you just go disarm
karate chop him?
Yeah. Why don't you go disarm the bad guys? And he's like, because they're not actors. I'm not going to, like, what are you talking about? And then the third, although it doesn't get talked about a lot, was the Paul Giamatti film Cold Souls. Which is pretty. I've seen that. Oh, really? It's again, he's playing a version of himself who is trying to act in this play, and he doesn't do a really great job. And so, again, in a very Kaufman-esque way, he goes to a company that can take his soul out and keep it on ice, and it turns out that his soul is a chickpea. Like he's like, it's a chickpea. And they're like, well, it's your soul, but yeah, on the outside it looks like a chickpea. But it's a pretty funny, weird, surrealist film. But again, there aren't a lot of examples, and I think to your point, most people are scared to go that meta because where do you go?
Yeah.
And I think that, you basically have two choices. Choice number one is the snake eats its own tail, adaptation.
But it's a circle,
and you eventually deconstruct to the point where you destroy the universe, right? Which is what Charlie Kaufman loves to do.
Yep.
And so that's why, like, he kept finding new ways to do it. And then the other version is kind of a Back to the Future. And what I mean by Back to the Future is time travel can be terrifying. Time travel can be primer if you really take it seriously.
Yeah.
Or time travel can be really fun where you're like, oh, there's two Marty McFlys. Weird. Okay, now there's only one again.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, that's the end of that, right?
You don't have to explain it.
Yeah, you don't have to. And that's what we did here, right? Yeah. Is that, like I said, nothing's actually at stake. And I loved that about this because I was wondering at some point, how are we actually going to pull this off? When we, spoiler alert, at the end of everything, it turns out that at some point, again, very much like adaptation, it turned into the movie that it wasn't supposed to be. Yeah. And then we're in the theater at the end watching the movie. I was like, good, because I liked all of these characters so much. Yes. I kind of didn't give a shit about the plot.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, right? It's all about the characters and the writing and just hanging out with him and hanging out with Pedro Pascal, who genuinely loves him. Like I think his character is obviously so important here, and there's a reason that Nick Cage liked it so much.
Yeah, because
it is a very intriguing character, and he has this whole veil of being this big drug boss. Or gun boss or
with
whatever.
This amazing place in Mallorca, and he's got like, he obviously is living this life where you're like, oh, he's a bad guy, but when you meet him, he is so not a bad guy that I was like, that was the only emotion at risk I had, is I didn't want him to end up being a bad guy because I liked him so much. In fact, I will say this right now. Yes, this is a love letter to Nick Cage, and he is incredible in it. But Pedro Pascal is my favorite part of this movie. I've never seen him do this character before. I've seen him do the funny, egotistical character from Game of Thrones. Yeah. I've seen him do the hard ass in The Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. I've seen him even do his version of Donald Trump in Wonder Woman 1984, which is pretty funny, and it was good. But you love him so much because he loves Nick Cage so much. And the two of them together, I could have watched 5 hours of that. Yeah. When they're on acid together.
Oh, man.
Like when he's going to leave him on the other side of the wall because he's like, let me go, leave me.
Brilliant scene.
But I just
Probably the funniest scene in the movie.
I didn't know that Pedro Pascal could be that funny.
Yeah.
He makes this face like a little girl in love with a pop star every time that he's talking to Nick Cage.
Tom Gormican does a great job of the writing here, and like he basically had to sell Nick Cage on this whole thing, and then came on with Pedro Pascal and all this stuff, and they basically wrote him like, hey, we're not making fun of you. We're not making fun of you here. This is a love letter.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then it had the duality and the different parts of it, and Pedro Pascal truly, like in real life, loves Nick Cage as well.
I saw an interview with him talking about it, and it was really cute.
But
he's really such a sweet guy.
But with the writing, they do a lot of things to make you think, okay, Javi's gonna reveal something soon.
Yeah.
And he's like, they find this secret door, and he's like, He's like, you're gonna think differently of me when I open this door. So
He's
like, just bring it. Do you think the kidnapped girl is in there?
There's a wax figure of his character from fucking Face Off.
Holding the gold guns.
He's like, how much did you pay for this monstrosity? He's like, $6,000. He's like, I'll give you 10 grand for it.
20 grand, yeah.
Yeah, that's like, it's all so, oh God,
I think we also need to talk about the subplot of his family, right? You know, obviously he's taking this job to pay the bills or whatever, but like, the whole beginning is so fun because you are just seeing Nick Cage be Nick Cage just in LA bouncing off, but also like trying to be a dad too.
But also getting drunk at his daughter's 16th birthday party and playing the piano and making up a song.
Cringe, like you're just so embarrassed the whole time.
Yeah.
But how obsessed he is, and I relate to this so much, of like his kids making his kids watch a 2-hour movie and discuss it with them, and like them in this therapy session, and you think at first it's his therapist, but they do this great switcheroo.
She's just leaning back on her
she's
phone.
like, and how would this affect your daughter? And she's like, oh, we're talking about me now.
Oh, great.
And he's so self-involved, and you kind of have to be if you're an actor. I think you just have to have that false sense of like, I can do this, right? Confidence. Like you have to have that mentality. Same with athletes, similar thing. You just have to be like, I can do this. Like I have to do this, or whatever it is. But I wonder if that's how my family feels sometimes, of like, the cabinet of Dr. Caligari, like, no, this part and this part. And she's like, he's consoling with her, and he says, she thought Humphrey Bogart was a porn star.
Yeah. And his wife's like, wait, really?
That's not good.
Oh, that isn't good. That's a bummer. Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, but I love that we see that side of him. Obviously, I don't even think he has a daughter in real life, but just having that family element there is what they're going for, right? And
right, for sure. Well, and I think that again, that it's who are the people in your life that are actually like trying to tie you back down to earth, right? And also like, I don't know. I guess there's a part of it that's like has something to do with like, to your point, needing to believe your own hype in order to get yourself like ready to go out and do something. Not that he went anywhere, right? Not that he went anywhere. That's exactly it. And that to the people who know you best, there's no way you don't sound like a douchebag when you're trying to like pump yourself back up that way. They're like, oh God, I know you're an artist, you're a visionary, right? And I think that that's where he understands that, and I think that's why certain things like what is it, guarding
test,
test. Like so when that came up, and that's him talking. That's his Pedro Pascal's talking about his father, and how that was the one thing they always agreed on was that movie, and you just go, that's so great because like of course you're going to reference. Of course you're going to reference things like Wild at Heart. Of course you're going to reference things like Face Off, Con Air. Yeah. But to be able to reference something like Guarding Tess, like that,
I couldn't believe they pulled it off. I really could, because the fact, like, it's a big speech in the middle of a party, and he makes the speech afterwards and talks about the character and all this stuff, and he just has this photographic memory of everything he's done, which is just crazy to think about. And it's funny you say like, oh, he has those moments where he's trying to be a visionary and an artist, but he also has a lot of moments of he just repeats shit that other people say. Yeah. Like he's like, oh, it's a role of lifetime. Yeah. Role of lifetime.
He's like the dude. It's like the dude being like, this aggression will not stand, and man. It's like he's picked up on it and
Neil
then
Patrick
using it
Harris
later.
As his agent.
Yeah.
Even he's like, it's not a sucky fucky whatever in the boat or whatever. And he's like, so this Javi guy, this isn't a sucky. He says,
it's not like, a sucky fucky.
Exactly.
Well,
anyway, so that's
it's totally true, and I think
funny to see both sides of it.
Well, and I think also like. I think being able to have fun with this idea of a guy who's been in so many different kinds of movies. We have our two CIA agents. And when she's like...
Tiffany Haddish.
Yeah, Tiffany Haddish is like, Nick Cage.
And
he's like, he goes... He goes, the guy from Face Off? And she goes, no, the guy from Moonstruck. Isn't that it? Like, I think
it's the other way around. Yeah, the guy says the guy from Instructor.
Yeah, but it's like that they don't, and you just go.
And she says, "I love Croods too."
Yeah,
that's like, I actually like that too.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
He's like, I'm a grown man. Why the fuck would I watch Croods too?
But you think about it and you go, that's kind of the interesting aspect too, is that it's like, if you've done a whole bunch of dramas and knucklehead action films and voiced over whatever kids movies and everything in between, a bunch of people know you from different things. I always think there's a really funny quote from Stephen King where he said he was in line at a store and a little old lady was like, I know who you are. You're that writer who writes all that awful horror stuff. And she's like, why couldn't you write something nice like Shawshank Redemption? And he's like, I did write that. And she was like, no, you didn't, and walked away. And he was like, guess I didn't.
Not to her.
Yeah. And I think that that's true. Is it's like people know you by these different things that you made, and that's how you exist in their head.
Totally. And, whether you know it or not, you become a fanboy or a fangirl or fan person, about somebody like this, that you grow up watching them, and you feel like you know them to some degree. And so you get this fanboy action comedy out of that. Right. Yeah. And so it's just kind of interesting. And, just some of their Nick Cage and Hobbies conversations, and they're ranking favorite movies, and Face Off #1. Thank you.
Yes.
Cabin of Dr. Caligari is that's just a throwback.
Paddington 2.
And Paddington 2,
which apparently there is a number of crew people that on this movie that worked on Paddington 2.
I've never seen it.
I don't know. Why would I ever see it? But it was like a total inside joke that they were like, Paddington 2.
People actually think this movie is all-time great movie. I've heard that before. There's some guy sat next to it at Sundance who was a movie critic at IndieWire, and his Twitter was full of Paddington 2 shit.
But why the second one?
I don't know. I've seen the first one, but I never saw the second one. But
anyways, what could they possibly do in the second one that makes...
Maybe we should do it one day. Let's do it.
That should have been our bonus episode.
If Nick Cage loves it, it can't be that bad, right?
Well, NICK Cage loves it. Not necessarily NIC, which we have misspelled it apparently on our whole festival. I didn't realize that until I started doing research.
It's so funny that you bring that up, because I totally went to this movie. I'm like, well, he's going to be called the right thing in this movie. And
that's the heightened version of him, is NICK.
So that's the heightened version. So I guess we could keep it, but all the thumbnails are wrong.
Yep. You heard it here first, folks. We learned our mistake.
That's so funny you said that.
Yeah, totally. I really love, again, not to belabor the point that I made earlier, but I really do love that there's very little actually at stake here.
I agree. It's like, will you make my movie is basically the biggest thing at stake, right? That's what Hobby wants. He's like, he wants him to read a screenplay.
Yeah, and it's like, even when the families are kidnapped and all that kind of stuff, and we get into full espionage, and we get him doing this weird Italian accent while he's done up in this makeup that makes him look, I don't know, kind of like Pete Townsend. He kind of looks like Pete Townsend. Yeah, right? Yeah. And it's so good though. He's in this
old Pete Townsend.
Yeah, he's the old Pete Townsend, and he's in this tracksuit. He's it's actually really funny, but it's super so funny, weird.
But you're also like, there's no way that guy's not gonna know that's not Nick Cage.
But the payoff of it, and obviously the guy that holds him hostage is Javi's brother. That's the big twist we find out, is that Javi doesn't know anything about any of this. Which again, I was so happy for, because I loved his character so much. I was like, he can't be the bad guy. He can't be a bad guy because you love him too much. I mean, he gives him his shoes. He gives him his loafers. That's right. Which is a fantastic
really
sequence.
Good on you.
He's like, those ones look really good on you. He's like, do you want to trade? And he's like permanently, that whole. But then Javi's brother does the reveal, rips the fake face off of him, and he's like, Nick fucking Cage. That is so. I rewound it. There was probably about 6 or 7 times I rewound parts of it to watch it again, because they're just, again, like I said, very little stakes, but that just allows you to just have fun with it. It's a true blue just comedy.
Totally. Honestly, the best part of this movie, obviously Nick Cage is amazing, but the thing that steps it up a level for me is just that reference of all the pop culture stuff that we grew up knowing as movie nerds, right? And so when he's on LSD and he's texting with the FBI or the CIA or whatever,
it's a Donnie Brasco
situation. Like, you have to read the text to do it, and then you have to know the reference of what he's talking about. But if you do, it's fucking pure genius.
And then you're like, of course, that's what, if you made Nick Cage be an undercover CIA plant, he would reference Donnie Brasco and be like, I think I'm pretty good at this stuff. Like, when he accidentally drugs himself and he's like climbing out the wall, and he's like, and he falls asleep and then he wakes up and he's like, I love you. Like, action. Yeah.
So good. So good.
All of those sequences are just like, they're so great. And again, of course, Javi loves Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And like, when they're like walking up the steps and he says that and he's like, really? You do too? And I was just like, oh,
he just needs a friend.
Well, they're best friends. They become best friends. It's like, it's so cute. And I don't know. It's just, that's a thing I didn't expect is, I think that's why he's my favorite character in this, even though obviously all the elements are so great, is I just loved like, it's two adult men becoming best friends is what the movie's about.
It's a bromance.
It is, and that's so cute. Like, we don't have enough stuff like that out there. You know?
If I was a millionaire, I would pay $1 million to hang out with Nick Cage for a couple of years, or a couple of days.
Couple years. That's your Freudian slip.
Well, technically, if they made the movie, which they do, we get the fake ending of what actually happened.
Yeah.
Here at the end, and they made the movie, so technically probably a couple of years actually. So that $1 million bought you a lot.
And that's actually a really funny detail is that as he's consulting with the CIA and he's like, well, he wants to I'm working on this script with him. And you said the actress's name,
Tiffany Haddish.
Tiffany Haddish, she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's great.
But she's working with him and being like, why don't you add in a kidnapping? He's like, no, see, this is why you don't understand. Like, that's not what this is. That's what you would want a studio to do. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting echoes again of adaptation of like, how do you not slide into doing a shitty...
When they're driving up that windy road, they're talking about like, this is a totally different movie. This is not the movie we want it to turn into.
Yeah.
And again, you're watching, just like adaptation, you're watching the movie that they're writing and making.
And it's turning into the espionage film in the midst of it.
So you could see why he was attracted to the screenplay after the fact and the nice letter that they wrote and everything.
Okay, as long as I'm like rewriting reality in the universe, other than the other best version of this movie that would be better than this version, which I'm not taking away from this version of the movie, but is where Pedro Pascal plays Nick Cage and Nick Cage plays Pedro Pascal's role.
Yeah.
The version that would be better than that is if Pedro Pascal actually had been the guy that really did pay Nick Cage in real life to build this film. And so all of this is based on a true story.
Oh, man. You're just getting so meta there.
But you see what I'm saying?
I get it.
Like somebody, some people wrote this screenplay because they love Nick Cage, and then they were like, oh, it's about this thing that ends up being meta.
What is the vehicle that's driving?
But if it had all been based on a true story, where it's like, what's Nick Cage doing? And it's like he's on an island in Mallorca, like
no, this really happened.
Working with this guy, and nobody knows. And then
that's
you're like,
Room type shit.
Yeah,
right?
and you're like, all of this happened except for the CIA part, and I don't have a brother who tried to kill him. But other than that, we did do acid. Yeah. And we came up with the rest of this screenplay. Like, amazing. That's the only thing that would make this better. But so it was, man, sometimes you just want to see some shit like this.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That's why I was like, we have to do. I know he has a million other movies that we could probably do. But to encapsulate him as an actor, him as an icon, this does it all for you.
God, I would almost put
package.
I would almost put this on one side of the coin, and on, like if a space alien landed and was like, "We've heard about this Nicolas Cage, what should we watch?" I would put this on one side, and I think I'd put Pig on the other.
Wow. And
I'd be like, "Watch these two," and they'd come back and be like, "I don't know what." Or again, knowing Nicolas Cage would be like, "Oh yeah, that's Bob. He's from our planet."
Yeah, no, Bob.
Which would make sense that's Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, love the over dramatic ending and the cut to Demi Moore and all that stuff. It's pretty hilarious. And of course they both play the hero. It's not just one of them. They both get to play the hero.
Yeah.
Beautiful bromance. Anyways, brilliant film.
Yes.
We'll end it there. Please like and subscribe. That's the end of our Nick Cage Festival. We are going to do an extension and a bonus episode of
The Weatherman.
The Weatherman for a Forgotten Gem.
Yep.
And then next week we're going to do that one scene from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Yeah.
So like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, you guys.
Thanks.